Greetings, friends, and welcome once again to the Creation Soapbox, brought to you by your friends here at abitoforange.com. Today we're starting with biblical creation fact number 4. All living things were created according to their kinds. What is a kind? Here is a short description of this from the good kids over at Answers in Genesis. The Bible uses the term kind. The Bible's first use of this word, which in Hebrew is min, is found in Genesis 1 when God creates plants and animals according to their kinds. It is used again in Genesis 6 and 8 when God instructs Noah to take 2 of every kind of animal onto the ark, and also in God's commandment for the animals to reproduce after the flood, according to their kind. A plain reading of the text infers that plants and animals were created to reproduce within the boundaries of their kind. Evidence to support this concept is clearly seen, or rather not seen, in our world today, as there are no reports of deaths, a dog and cat, or house, horse and cow. So a good rule of thumb is that if 2 things can breed together, then they are of the same created kind. It's a bit more complicated than this, but for the time being, this is a quick measure of kind. Here's one of many examples that could be shown to demonstrate how a lot of different varieties of animals all come from the same created kind. This is your zebra, horse, donkey, zonkey, and zorse. So a lot of people would think that, well, the horse and the zebra are different kinds of animals. Well, they can be bred together into the zorse. And so that tells us, well, they're the same created kind. So God might not have made the zebra in the first week. He might not have made the horse in the first week, but he made some kind of horse kind. And from that horse kind, these many different varieties have descended over the many generations since Noah's flood. Then there are things that we know will never happen. You'll never get a parakeet and a walrus to mate, and it's probably better that we don't. Also, there is no crocoduck. There is no elephant duck, and there's no guinea pig lion. They are different kinds of animals, and that's why these pictures are funny, because these are things that never can exist in nature. Which is a shame, because this thing, on Easter, this would sell like hotcakes. Real science shows a diversity of kinds. What we actually observe is the creationary orchard. So instead of a single tree of life like Darwin proposed, the creationary orchard shows distinct trees of animal kinds and plant kinds, beginning with great amounts of genetic diversity, and then branching out into the varieties of that created kind. So one of these trees would represent the horse kind, and then the branches near the top would represent the zebra and the different varieties of horse and the donkeys and that kind of thing. What evolution imagines to be there, what evolution has to propose despite an entire lack of evidence, is some kind of connection between those different trees so that they are all in fact the branches of one single tree. Observational science only supports the orchard. There is no evidence for the connection of those trees below the surface there. So that there are horses, and we can see that horses can be bred from horses, and horses breed other horses. There is no fossil evidence or living evidence that there is a common ancestor between horses and dogs. That has to be imagined somewhere in the distant past. So what we observe is the creationary orchard, many different trees of distinct kinds. What evolution imagines to be there is all of those interconnecting branches, but there's no evidence for it at all. In Genesis 1, God said, "Let the land produce vegetation, seed-bearing plants and trees on the land that bear fruit with seed in it, according to their various kinds." So God created the great creatures of the sea and every living thing with water that teems and moves about in it, according to their kinds, and every winged bird, according to its kind. And God said, "Let the land produce living creatures according to their kinds, the livestock, the creatures that move along the ground, and wild animals, each according to its kind." Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds of the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them. So an important thing to notice here is God created birds according to their kind, and he created fish according to their kind, but he created humans one at a time. He made Adam, and then he made Eve, and then he said these will be the first parents of all living humans. There are not different species of human. We are all descended from the same first parents. That's important to note. Now, the idea of kind comes up again in the flood narrative. In Genesis 6:20, God says, "2 of every kind of bird, of every kind of animal, and of every kind of creature that moves along the ground will come to you to be kept alive." So not every variety, not every species, depending on how you use the word, but every kind, 2 of every kind. So let's take a look at some evidences from known family kinds. The Cabbage Family Tree is a diverse family that comes from the wild mustard. From the wild mustard, we have managed to cultivate the cauliflower, the broccoli, the cabbage, the kale, and the kohlrabi? Is that a thing? People eat that? I don't know. Anyway, so if you take a look at some of the distinctions between them, the cauliflower is made by taking the wild mustard and getting a sterility of flowers, or the broccoli a suppression of flower development. Once again, that's not a game. You start off with wild mustard and you suppress or you lose some feature that it already had. And by losing existing information, you create new varieties. So the family tree here grows up, starting off with more genetic information in the parent or grandparent species, and then developing different varieties and species primarily by losing or just shuffling existing information. Similarly, and this is not controversial, that sometime within human history, we started off with some kind of ancestral wolf kind. And from that, humans have bred hundreds of different kinds of dog. And again, by shuffling the genes that exist, and we selected what's referred to as artificial selection, we selected different traits, behaviors, and physical appearance that we wanted, all of which are the result of shuffling existing genes that already existed in the ancestral wolf population, or losing genes and resulting in things like the poodle. Poodle is a collection of mutations and problems because it's lost so much genetic information. But again, something like a poodle is not created by adding a whole lot of information, but by losing a bunch of information that already existed. So this family tree is merely upside down. The trunk is the wolf, and all of those branches that exist today are the many different varieties that come from shuffling and disseminating the original trunk of the tree. So here once again is the timeline of evolutionary history, and we have seen that the cabbage is part of a plant family, wherein the mustard had many children and grandchildren that have become broccoli, cauliflower, and kale, and the wolf is the great-great-granddaddy of all the different kinds of dogs you find in pet shops all over the world today. But because all dogs have an ancestor that's a dog, and because all these different types of plants have an ancestor that was a plant, I think it might still be stretching the evidence a tad thin to then suggest that cabbages and wolves have an ancestor in common. I hope you enjoyed this bit of orange. If you want to see more, check out abitoforange.com, and of course peruse the collection on our YouTube channel. As always, thanks for watching, and remember, Jesus loves you.